Ladies, what is going on with your money? Do you know what your net worth is? Or are you busy worrying about your credit score? Is your career going to help you build wealth, or you're not really sure how it fits in? And lastly, if I talk to your friends, your siblings, your spouse, and I ask them, what are your money goals? Would they know what to say? Hi, I am Katie Heyer, and welcome to the show. On the Katie Heyer Show, we like to talk about money, relationships, careers, women's challenges in that regard, and of course, Jesus. Not necessarily in that order. I am your guide. Think of me as your metaphorical big sister. And of course, we have a ton of fun as we learn to become rock stars with money. Now, if you have missed any previous episode, you can always head on over to the show at katieheyer.com. Let's head back to our muse of the show, the Proverbs 31 woman. I love that music. Proverbs 31:11 reads, "The heart of her husband trusts in her, and he will have no lack of gain." When I read the scriptures in my study where I was comparing different Bible verses from different translations, some of those other verses said, instead of "he will have no lack of gain," it said, "and he will have no ill-gotten gain," or "he will have no spoils." No, he will have a lack of spoil. Military spoil, like spoil taken by siege. That's what the language evoked as I read those other translations. And that added layers of meaning to the scripture that I didn't see before. To me, that meant he has no lack of ill-gotten gain. Their partnership together is about integrity and elevates them both. So interesting to me. So, of course, that means that today's focus is all about relationships. Because we are communal creatures, we were created to be in community. No matter where we walk, we are in relationships, whether that's our siblings and our parents and our children, or if it's in the workplace with our boss or our colleagues. Of course, our spouse is the number one most important relationship in our life after Christ. And then, of course, there's friend relationships. How do you navigate those when it comes to trying to make sure you're on a plan and winning with money? Well, how well we intentionally manage these relationships when it comes to stewarding money well is really important. It's a determinant of how well you will do, really, because who we surround ourselves with really influences how we act. Thomas Stanley, the author of The Millionaire Mindset and The Millionaire Next Door, said that one of the number one most important things that determined how well people ended up financially later in life was their choice of spouse. Were they going to choose someone who they were going to have to pull along behind them? Or were they going to choose someone that was going to leave them in the dust? His point was that an equal partnership where both people are carrying on toward the vision was the most important thing. I thought as we took our first steps into talking about relationships with money that we could talk about what Dave, my husband, and I experienced going through the baby steps. Baby step 1 being saving $1,000 for a starter emergency fund. Baby step 2 is paying off all our debt. So let's jump into that interview. Today on the show, my special guest is the special guest in my house every day. It's my spouse, my husband, Dave. Say hi.
Hello.
He is not happy to be here. He prefers to be behind the scenes. But I sprang it on him last night and said, will you please come on the show and we can talk about our relationship? And he said yes. So,
Yes.
Dave, in 5 words or less, what do you do for work?
Crimes and investigations.
Oh, that's 3 words. Good job. We've been married now for a decade.
A little bit longer, 11 years.
Only a smidge longer. And we have been through quite a few things together.
Absolutely.
ever since we got married and jumped into a lot of debt and then worked like crazy to get out.
Absolutely.
I have a couple of questions here
All right.
for us
Fire away.
to jump into because we were able to successfully navigate paying off our student loans, and it was absolutely a joint effort. I could not have done it without you. I wouldn't have wanted to do it without you.
That's very sweet. There were a lot of highs and lows to that.
There were a lot of highs and lows. You know the scripture that says, where there is no vision, the people perish.
Mm.
So, did we have a vision?
Yeah, I actually think that was one of the things that was instrumental in actually finally breaking us out. The vision created hope for a life after debt.
Hmm.
And I think that's especially for the people that are so far down that they can't see which way is up. Hope is a powerful ally, and that is one that has been powerful for us in our journey.
Did we make it to our vision?
We're still there. We're still going there.
Yeah.
We're certainly out of debt, so parts of the vision have come true, uh, but there's still more work to be done.
There is still more work to be done. Absolutely. But we have absolutely broken the chains of debt and changed our family tree.
Absolutely. I think it's going to be important for our kids. We've done something, we have lived, as Dave Ramsey likes to say, like no one else, so that we can live like no one else. And so we're living proof that the process works. But creating a vision, getting on board, and dreaming about what life will be like post debt, post doing all these sacrifices is very important.
Let's throw out what some of those little dreams were.
Yeah, we dreamed that one day we would actually, this is the part that we haven't obtained yet, that we'd eventually retire to the French countryside and have like a bakery or something fun like that.
Yeah, so there were the big things to the medium things. I've always wanted to get my pilot's license, so I'm starting to take lessons now that we can
Yeah.
afford it. You've been able to do some fun things.
Yeah, able to go on a couple of big fishing trips that I wanted to go on. So
Yeah.
definitely had some fun. Now that we've been out of debt, we've been able to say yes to ourselves a little bit, which has been great.
So we had little visions like, oh man, I really wish I could get that dresser or go on that trip or whatever. Medium stuff like major purchases
Yeah, and then the big stuff.
and the big stuff.
Which, so I guess it would be what I would say was important for us is having like a vision meeting, like a vision casting. We actually got out and away from our million children and had a little bit of time alone in a cabin. And we were able to sit down and kind of flesh out some of those ideas, like talk about to each other, be honest about what we wanted
Yeah.
from life if we weren't shackled by our current debt.
Our friends, the other Katie and Jeff, told us about that, a vision weekend where you go and you intentionally focus on where you want to go in your relationship financially, socially, spiritually, all those things. So yeah, that was hugely important. So we are an open book. We're very honest, uproariously funny, empoweringly frank. And so we thought it would be fun to and helpful for you guys if we shared some of the things that did not work. We have been working on becoming debt free and getting our life back financially for over 7 years now. That's because the first 2 years we were treading water. We didn't make enough to make our minimums. We had deferred.
We stopped the bleeding. We weren't gaining any more debt in terms of taking out any more loans, but we weren't making any progress either.
Right.
We had to build our income up to assist us in paying off debt.
So we learned a lot the hard way. We made a lot of mistakes in those 7
Absolutely.
years. So let's each say something that did not go right when it came to following the baby steps, working our debt snowball, paying off our loans. What did not go well?
Yeah. Well, we had this thing called the commission, and in the commission, it was like I could work more extra jobs and get a little bit more spending money. And I think all that really did was kind of enhance contentment issues that I was already struggling with. And so I don't really think that helped me. And also, I don't really think you liked it.
That's true. Yeah. The commission was a little side experiment that we thought would help us because as Dave is a police officer, he has a lot of extra jobs available to him in the
Hmm.
form of what are called security details. This is where he's hired as private security because he is a commissioned police officer. So the logic was if he was going to be pulling 80-hour weeks so that we could get out of debt, why wouldn't he get to spend a little more money because he's working a lot more?
Yeah, and I think the issue that it created was, and it came up in several of our money fights. Yes, we had money fights.
Surprise!
Surprise. Uh, it came up several times that you didn't feel like this was fair. Yes, you had to stay home to
Mm,
watch the children while I'm going off doing these security details, but then only I got extra spending money. And like I said, it really just enhanced my heart issues, which were contentment in nature.
interesting. That was a hard thing
Yeah.
to overcome. And today we have a lot of spending money,
Yep.
and we both have the same spending money.
Yep. Absolutely the same.
And that was hard to learn because I did want to. I just loved you, and I of course I love you now. I'm saying to our listeners, I wanted to honor him, knowing that he was sacrificing all of
Mm.
his free time so we could do this. So why wouldn't I try to make it easier for him? But like you said, the contentment issues meant that didn't matter.
It didn't matter how much money I had.
And I was frustrated on top of it. Like, why can't you just have nothing like, or $20 like me?
Yeah, it kind of created a negative cycle.
It did. We thought we could make something new, and there's nothing new under the sun.
Right.
And that I'm jumping ahead of myself. For me, the hardest things were when I realized uh, I was having trust issues. Like
Mm.
if I saw you had spent something that we weren't planning on it, and I would bust, I would go crazy, right? I would text you, "What are these $7 you spent at Taco
Yeah, no,
Bell?"
I mean, Dave actually talks about this in his
Oh
program, the
man.
baby steps of coming up with an amount that you that you need to discuss with your wife to make a purchase that they don't know about. Right off the bat, like he says, like without having to have a budget conversation and come to an agreement, there should be a dollar limit. And in our relationship, that was like 50 cents.
Right,
I couldn't even get a Coke.
because that's when you're when you're in baby step 2, you're not spending anything. You're spending only your regular necessary bills, and everything else is going to loans. And so I
Yeah,
used to call it nickel and diming. And I'm just so embarrassed to admit it. So I knew that it was a trust issue. I didn't know it then. I know it now looking back, but I can recognize and diagnose it as a trust issue because I said, leave your debit card at home with me. What
yeah,
kind of
didn't work.
relationship is that? No, it was totally disrespectful. And I am glad that you refused because
Right,
you kept your dignity, and I shouldn't have done that in the first place. Have
right.
I ever apologized to you for that?
I think you have.
I'm sorry.
No, it's okay.
You know, those frustrating things that come up in our relationship are hard enough. Those things are hard enough. But other times, things are going to happen outside of your relationship that are the reason having a vision is so important. So,
Absolutely.
vision is, let me say it again, hugely important to have because you are going to face huge challenges. So, what is one thing that you remembered that emotionally was trying and you needed to hang on to that
Ooh.
vision?
Um, the most the hardest thing for me when we were paying off debt was watching my kids go to school in secondhand clothes.
Mm.
I was embarrassed for them. They, of course, knew nothing was wrong. Uh, like secondhand uniforms, and the uniforms are cheap to begin with.
And also
Uh,
fine. It's not like they were
right. And so,
rags. They weren't
no, they
rags,
weren't
but
rags, but I mean,
they had
we
patches.
really and generously enough, we had teachers and stuff just give our kids clothing, which made me
Yeah.
think that their uniforms and the state of their clothing was noticed by others.
Mm.
And so I honestly feel so much better now that we can, go out and buy clothing for our children that not only fits, but it is in better shape.
Mm.
So that was really hard for me watching them day in and day out. Were basically suffering alongside us, but they just didn't know.
Yeah, I just had a residue of shame over me because if we had been intentional, we had thought outside of ourselves for a minute, then we wouldn't have put our kids through that.
No, hindsight's 2020 though. And
Yeah.
what we did do is we did buckle down and eventually break the cycle.
We did.
We did.
So what did work?
Oh, well, learning to budget was something that was really powerful. Like, I hate budgeting. I'm the free spirit in our relationship. She's the money guru. I'm the free spirit spender, which is kind of like
The
a free spirit.
spirit and the nerd.
Okay, I don't know what I'm talking about, but
You should have a YouTube show and a podcast.
no. Anyway,
Budgeting was something that went well.
yeah. Well,
Did it always go well?
No.
Yeah.
Month one, like when you sit down and you're like planning out your budget for hours and you feel like you've thought of everything, and it's not 30 minutes in after the discussion's over, they're like, oh,
That it breaks.
we forgot this other thing, and that breaks everything, and you've got to re-go through it because you have no money, or we didn't.
Right.
And so
They
if we
spent it at
thought,
Taco Bell, remember?
right, if we saw something else, it really affected us with that low income that we started with. Now, squeezing a $50 light bill or whatever our energy bill is, water bill, into our budget if we would forget it would not be hard. But then it was. And when you first learn to budget, you're forgetting a lot of things.
And I think that you told me once before that you thought we'd make a budget and then we were done. Yay, we're done forever. But
yeah,
it was a process. You realize it's a few months long process before you start to really get it right.
Right. And even then, I would say that our budget didn't really get to a point where it was like copy paste predictable for a couple of years.
Right.
But once we started to get so good at it that we could anticipate car maintenance, we can anticipate
insurance,
yeah,
bills,
anything under the sun. When we can anticipate it, we became so much better.
I think the less debt you have, the less paycheck to paycheck you're living, the more predictable everything becomes, the less emergency anything becomes.
Absolutely.
The other good thing that I would add was using cash. We tend to overspend. The royal we, America, we tend to overspend on a card or digitally on Apple Pay. Just swipe or no swiping. Using cash really helped us rein in our grocery budgets.
Yeah.
Anytime we would just accidentally spend because we went near a Walmart,
Oh, and it was straight up embarrassing. Sometimes being at the grocery counter and I'm like, nope, you're gonna have to put that back, and you're gonna have to put that back. You're just doing things that other people don't do, in the hopes that one day you get to live like other people can.
Yeah. So how do you get on the same page with your spouse? How do you get a shared vision?
Ooh, well, there was a lot of resistance on my end. I was the guy, but if I was talking to another guy that was resisting, here's what I would say. I mean, marriage is this beautiful triangle where, you and your spouse are on each bottom end and God's at the top. And ultimately, the closer you guys climb up the ladder towards God, the closer y'all get to each other. You're really wanting to be unified on everything. So I would tell the guy that if your woman is pursuing God and pursuing biblical finance, like what the Bible says about money, then I would say you as the head of the house should do everything you can to be unified with her, even if that means following what you think is her kooky idea. Okay?
Are you saying my kooky idea? I hear you. Yeah, I would just add to go back to dreaming and the why and what would be amazing, babe, if we had no debt, if our kids' college was taken care of, if we had no mortgage payment, if we had no stress, right? Like I would encourage married couples to talk about the dream of life and financial peace. Use that as a starting point. And then fill out your
I
why.
mean, you're married, so there should be some sort of common ground somewhere. If there's not, you may have more than a money problem. Um, I would just say that start on the ground that we have common. Realize that you all love each other. Might be buried a little deeper, but realize that you love each other. Work on the common ground you have. Think about each other's needs, and you're basically living out Ephesians 5, which talks about that. If you keep that cycle going, I think you're going to have an even easier time than we did.
I pray that you do. This has been great. Thank you, babe.
No problem.
Wasn't that fun? I had such a blast getting to sit down with him and talk about what went wrong, what went well. And I took some notes because Pastor Mike says history makers are note takers. So I took notes on my own session just to sum up for us here. Number one, intentionally set a vision together. The Bible says a strand of three cords is not easily broken. And Dave talked about three people in a relationship: you, me, God. The closer we all come to God, the closer we all come together. Number two, a vision will power you through tough times when times get really, really tough. Just like when you don't know, why am I doing these 80-hour weeks? Oh, yeah, it's because I'm going to want to take care of my parents when they get old. It's because we want to adopt and we really need to be able to afford it. It's because we want to become missionaries abroad and how can we afford it with all these bills, etc., etc., etc. What is your vision? Keep your vision in your mind. That will help you power through as you do the hard, diligent work that is personal finance. Number three, a united vision gives you something to be united to work for. And if you are not working together with your spouse, oh my gosh, it's hard to keep going. Like when Dave would spend on Taco Bell when I was trying to pay off our debt with quarters that I would find in the couch. Felt like we were going in circles, but we came together. Made a lot of mistakes, but here we are, many years later, much stronger than before, I'm very happy to say. Next, setting a vision takes work. It is really hard. It's really hard to get out of the muck and the mire and to set your thoughts on that. Number five, how do you get onto a shared vision? How do you get a shared vision? Dave says, again, the closer we get to God, the closer we become together. I say, talk about your dreams first. Wouldn't it be incredible when? And then you can go forward from there. To illustrate how united you can be on a budget, I want to jump in real fast to talking about what that looks like with a budgeting app with Every Dollar or even just your Excel file or your notepad. In our imaginary budget for the purposes of this show, I have a section called Family. And part of the plan for the month is to spend $120 on date night. So we can go out. We could go out a couple times for just drinks, or we could have a really nice night just one time. And that can look different for you. If you're in Kansas City, maybe that's crazy big, or some rural place, maybe that's a lot of money. If you're in a big city, you might need to double that. The point is, on a united budget, you're both together and everything goes in the same budget. We also put fun stuff with kids in there. In this example, I've outlined $260 for an anniversary. All of these things go in the same budget. Then I also would encourage you to put separate line items for spending money for each of you. You need to have spending money. When you're in get out of debt mode, it's next to nothing. I vote nothing, but you don't want to blow your budget. So give yourself some wiggle room. When we were getting out of debt, our blow money was between, or our spending money, another word for it is blow money. Our spending money was $15 to $40 a month, and that was it. In the post-debt life, it's a lot more than that. Some months it's $175 a person, some months it's $500 a person. It just depends on the income that month, the goals we're trying to hit. It's really easy. It's really simple to do a budget together. And I would encourage you, marrieds, to do one together. Let's jump into the next section, the tribe question. And the tribe question this episode is, how do my boyfriend and I combine accounts? This is a great question because I get it all the time. I know people are confused about the subject. How do I do it? What are the mechanics? And there is just one key thing to keep in mind. Don't do it unless you're married. I hope I wasn't unclear. If my microphone peaked right then, let me say it again. Don't combine your finances. Don't let your finances say, I do, until you have said, I do. Then once you actually combine finances, it's very simple paperwork. Last thing before we close out the show is this myth that I hear quite often. I can do it all on my own, people say. When they think there's no way I'm getting on the same page with my spouse, or they think my spouse is pulling me down and I'm pulling her along or pulling him along, or my spouse doesn't include me. It is a myth that I can do it on my own. The Bible talks all the time about the importance of unity. I think Dave even mentioned that one of the very last things Jesus says in the Garden of Gethsemane is he prays for unity all the time. Community and unity is mentioned over and over again. And for singles, what does this look like for you? It means you need an accountability partner. You need somebody who is not going to encourage you to max out your credit cards every month. Someone who's going to say, did you make your budget? Did you plan your meals? Did you figure out how you're going to make some more money and pay off some more debt? An accountability partner is going to take the place of the spouse in the married person's situation, because it is hard to do this alone as a single person. It's hard when you are all by yourself. You're the only one making any income. And when you just want that Taco Bell, there's no one to tell you no. You need to have somebody you can text and say, I need your support. Will you please pray for me? Will you give me some advice? And then marrieds, a strand of 3 cords is not easily broken. Partnering together is the way to go. That's the truth. As we come to the end of this relationships episode, I just want to encourage you to seek unity, to seek that joint vision. If you have missed anything on this relationships episode and you want to go back to it, or any previous episodes, I'm going to have them all on the website. Just go to katieheyer.com.